All right, guys, it's true crime time again. I'm Riane Nix.
And I'm Taylor Lynch.
And we're your hosts for Pure Malice, a true crime podcast. The information shared in this podcast or on this website is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The host will not be held responsible for any misled interpretations of this content. The opinions and views expressed are those of the host and guest and should not be considered advice. We cannot guarantee the accuracy of any statements from guests or the sufficiency of the information. Are you ready to lose weight and keep it off? At Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness, we offer powerful, medically supervised weight loss solutions using semaglutide and tirzepatide, the same game-changing medications making headlines across the country. Our expert team will guide you every step of the way so you can achieve real results safely and confidently. Feel better, look better, live better. Call Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness today at 254-310-7131 and start your transformation. Vital Flow, where wellness meets results. What's up, guys? Welcome back. So we've got a great case for you today. We're really excited about it. So let's go ahead and dive in.
We are covering the Texas killing fields. Ooh, okay, I'm ready.
So for those of you who don't know, we are sisters. I am the middle sister. Taylor is my baby sister. We are Texas girls, born and raised. So any case that hits close to home is always exciting to cover. And in this case, I mean, you could easily put 30 plus hours into it, just looking over all of the cases that make up this big case. It's definitely disturbing. And honestly, it's easy to be frustrated whenever you're looking at the incompetency surrounding the early investigations of some of these victims. And I mean, we know that in the 70s and the 80s, police work was not what it is today, especially in smaller towns. Things were not digitalized and we were not sharing information as sufficiently as we could have been. But even giving them that, I mean, there's just a lot of basic things like securing crime scenes, preserving evidence that could have helped solve some of these unsolved murders. Keep in mind that this is a massive case and that we did try to condense it as much as we could to help it make sense for you, because there are so many different pieces to the case and so many other cases that have their own stories within this one massive case. But we're going to start with how the whole thing came about, the origins of it, and the 4 young women that were murdered that really kind of started the whole investigation at the very beginning. And unfortunately, we will not be able to cover every single victim because there are 30 plus victims here. All of them are women and most of them are between the ages of 12 and 25. So this is definitely a daunting case. It seems like there's a good chance that a lot of these cases may not get solved for various different reasons, which we'll discuss along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and let Taylor get started. Taylor, take it away.
All right. If you're not familiar with the Texas killing fields, it's a stretch near Interstate 45 between Houston and Galveston, Texas, where more than 30 bodies have been discovered dating back to 1971. Hold on, you're going to have to zoom up even more. I can't see.
Is that too big?
No, that's better. I think I need to go get my eyes checked.
Maybe so, man.
By the way, we're doing this early. I haven't had coffee. Oh, perfect. There we go. So back to it. Now that I can see. Oh, look at Toothless over there. We'll talk about him later, y'all. Anyways, well, now I feel like we have to say it. He's a bearded dragon, one of 2 that my husband felt like our kids earned. My husband takes care of them when he's home. He does a great job with them. They go on field trips with them. The bigger one, Toothless, actually got to go pick up my son like almost every day. He would take him with him and let him ride on the dashboard and stuff. So yes, we have lizards that we handle like dogs. Anyways, okay, dragging you back into the case. So the number that most people have come to when going over the case is actually 33 murders. We can start with the most notorious area within the Texas killing fields, which is an area that's 25 acres, often called the Colder Road Fields in League City, Texas, where the bodies of 4 women were found between 1983 and 1991. So y'all, before I was born. Yeah, I'm 92. So, as previously stated, many of the victims are girls or young women, and many more have disappeared from the I-45 area and are still missing to this day. Almost all of the Texas killing field victims were between the age 12 and 25, And very few of these disappearances and murders have ever been solved, even with the help of the local police departments. If you ever hear some squeaking, we're on a couch that's about 40 years old, probably. But it's the most comfortable thing ever. Anyways, okay, so they have Harris County Sheriff's Department, the local municipal departments, even the FBI is involved in these cases. Obviously, there is a serial. Uh, all I can think of you is saying, Carl? Carl. Oh, no, you're stupid. Okay. For real, stop. I'm so sorry. Okay. Obviously, there is a I can't help it. Obviously, there is a serial killer involved and potentially more than one. Dun dun dun. Anytime a case starts to have this many victims and it seems like they could be connected, the FBI is going to get involved. But, hold on. I have to put this tidbit out there. We actually know somebody who works in the FBI. We should probably anonymously have her talk. All right, cool. I digress. It's still been very difficult to tie it all together and figure out who is behind these murders. I just want to say, I think that our viewers are going to be like, man, these people are obviously undiagnosed with ADHD.
They probably will. And you know what? Let's just make that our poll for this episode. Head over to our Spotify and vote and let us know which one of us you think has ADHD. Is it Riane? Is it Taylor? Is it both? Or is it neither? Let us know what you think.
Okay. Back to it. The area has often been described as the perfect place to kill someone and get away with it. A father of one of the victims, Tim Miller, has been an integral part of the whole investigation and has said that if you were to scream at the top of your lungs in the Calderfield Road area, right off I-45, no one would be able to hear you. Yeah, that's kind of like bone chilling. He even went there and fired off several rounds from a gun to just see if anyone would hear it and call to report it. And no one ever did. It's a very rural area, and obviously with it being right off I-45, there's a ton of road noise there, and it's not very lit up. Over time, of course, there's been a lot of growth and development with subdivisions and commercial growth, but especially back in the 1980s, there was none of that. So not only was the area very remote, but from the sites of some of the recovered bodies, the refineries at the south end of the city and the traffic of I-45 there make plenty of noise that could drown out the sounds of an attack. The director of the film, Texas Killing Fields, which we will talk about later, Omni Canyon Man. It's an intense name. I like it. Strong. Anyways, okay. So Omni Canyon Man visited the area and said that if you yelled, no one would necessarily hear you. And if you ran, there wasn't really anywhere to go. So traveling on I-45 south out of Houston, the area is mixed of dense suburban neighborhoods, and it continues into open sprawling fields, bayous, and retention ponds. The petrochemical plants operate near the coastline, and the further south you go, old oil fields and desolated marshes filled the area between Houston and Galveston. Although the population has boomed in the area, there are still plenty of spaces that are still very remote today. And to make the case even more difficult to investigate, as you probably know, this area gets hit with hurricanes quite often. So on top of the damage these hurricanes do to the local communities there, there's no telling how much damage the storms have caused to potential crime scenes, evidence, and the remains of victims.
So true, because they really do. They get slammed with hurricanes.
Yeah, even if the hurricanes don't hit, it's like the floodings of it do.
You get the aftermath of it. And in this area, I mean, it reaches 110 degrees daily.
Yeah, and it's extremely humid. Yeah, so if you don't know about Texas weather, I would say almost every Texan would probably agree. Texas weather is extremely unpredictable. The amount of rain and water that comes in during those seasons with the extreme heat, it has left many of the victims' remains almost completely skeletal when discovered, and most of the DNA is completely washed away or gone at that point.
it would just make it really difficult for any of the cases to be solved with those things added onto everything else.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and set the scene for the Houston area in the 1970s when this all began. This area was on the rise. NASA Space Center drew a bunch of attention, and an oil boom drove the local economy, and tons of people were moving to the area for jobs. Exxon was building some of the largest refineries in the entire world in this area, and the economic boom drew in countless people, which also led to suburbs, shopping centers, and tourist spots to expand at a rapid pace. Houston began drawing in thousands of visitors looking for fun in the big city. This included two 15-year-old girls named Debbie Ackerman and Maria Johnson, who would become some of the Texas killing field earliest victims. Debbie was a champion water skier, and they both loved the beach and surfing. They were last seen on November 15th of 1971, attempting to hitchhike to Houston. They were spotted at an island ice cream shop in Galveston before vanishing. 2 days later, on November 17th in 1971, their bodies were discovered partially nude near a bayou near Texas City. Witnesses say that they saw a man in a white van stopping by a curb to pick up the girls and agreeing to drive them up to Houston. Less than 2 weeks later, the remains of 13-year-old Colette Wilson were discovered near Addicks Reservoir, 10 miles west of Houston. She was last seen at the Alvin bus stop located on County Road 99 and Highway 6 in Alvin, Texas. Her band director had dropped her off there on June 17th, 1971, and only 3 days earlier, the remains of 19-year-old Gloria Gonzalez had been found in the same reservoir. Many, many more victims would disappear along I-45, including 14-year-old Brenda Jones. She was last seen walking to Galveston Hospital, and her body was discovered on July 2nd of 1971, floating in the nearby Galveston Bay, not far from the interstate.
So that's a lot of bodies right there.
Yeah, 5. Unfortunately, at the time, not many of the disappearances and suspected murders were under heavy media spotlight. The real national pressure wouldn't come until the 1980s when many other victims started disappearing.
And I don't know why, but it always surprises me whenever you look back at cases where all of these women and young girls start coming up missing and eventually start coming up dead. And yet there's very little media coverage. And there seemed to always be an excuse for why they were missing. A lot of them were said to be runaways. And I know that that was very common back then, but still, it just seems like they always had a reason for what happened. And you'll see later in some of the cases too that it's kind of the same thing where they say this victim was hanging out with the wrong people, or this one was a cocktail waitress hanging out at bars, where the public would kind of just shrug their shoulders and be like, oh, well, that makes sense. It just seems like we can accept whenever a young woman disappears, whenever it's paired with that kind of image. It comes off as though, some people are worth looking for and others aren't. And that's a tragic thing. Everyone is worth looking for and everyone deserves the same efforts. And had all of those cases been treated equally in the eyes of law enforcement, a lot of these cases would have been solved very quickly, and they wouldn't still be cold cases. You'll see, too, that the media coverage doesn't really explode until a certain victim goes missing. And it seems that the killer knew that. He was picking his victims based on that kind of thinking, that he could prey on the most vulnerable, and the police aren't looking for them.
Which, I feel like a lot of that has to do with, the generation at the time period we're in. Just like in healthcare, you do your due diligence regardless of the situation. People can make bad choices and make, what you would consider a mistake, but you have to do your due diligence to support them, give them resources, look into the circumstances of what happened. Life is life. Yeah, so and that's always the case, right? There's always one, either the family or somebody willing to put it out there that so-and-so is missing.
I think the age of the victims play a role too, because you will see, as Taylor just said, that later on, media coverage doesn't get big until a certain victim pops up. And I think that the age of that victim has a lot to do with the amount of coverage. Also, just the circumstances around her disappearance. was different than some of the other cases, but I think that age has a big part in that.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, I think the people that commit these crimes and do these horrific things, they are very savvy. Sometimes they're not, and it's just like coincidence or by luck, right? But in this specific case, it really seems like that killer knew that. Even if it's like, subconsciously, there is that preparation majority of the time. It's very rare that it's completely all coincidental. Like the mind, I think, is an incredible thing, and it's also crazy how twisted it can be. But in this case, it definitely seems like the killer did know this. Honestly, I would go as far as saying that he is preying on the most invaluable within the population, and he knows that. I'm not saying they're invaluable, but that is the perception that the community at the time and law enforcement held. So it wasn't worth anybody's time. It just wasn't somebody worth putting effort in. It's awful. So the 25 acres, often called the Calder Road Fields, at the south end of League City, is an area we're going to be talking a lot about. It is an unsuspecting piece of land, originally owned by the petrochemical company, that sat mostly empty for many years. The only thing there was a horse trail ride business and a main road, which was Calder Drive, which was a single dirt road with a dead end. I think it's paved now, but at the time it was just a dirt road. In the 1980s, this area and the horrific activity within it would soon overwhelm the local community and the local police. So let's get into the first victim found in this area. On April 6, 1984, there was a boy and a dog walking through this area, and the dog bolted into the woods, and it came back with a human skull in its mouth.
Oh, got more than they bargained for there, huh?
Mm-hmm. Soon after, a set of human remains of a local woman, 25-year-old bartender at the Texas Moon, named Heidi Fye, were discovered underneath a nearby tree. Her friends called her Heidi Fye, which is what we'll be calling her here. But if you've watched any of the documentaries or you plan to, sometimes her family does call her Heidi. So she is the woman who went missing 6 months earlier on October 7th of 1983. She was on her way to Houston to a house that her boyfriend had been fixing up, and they were planning to move a trailer from his property into Heidi's mom's backyard and stay there to save some money. But Heidi never arrived in Houston. She was last seen by a clerk at a convenience store on a payphone located off of West Main Street in Hobbs in League City, Texas. But when the family contacted the League City Police Department, they brushed it off, told her family that she was probably just a runaway, and recommended that the family wait a few days to see if Heidi would come back. To me, it's always so frustrating because I feel like all these cases, especially child abductions, all that kind of stuff, it's like, oh, you have to wait so long to report. Why do you have to wait? Like, if a family is concerned about something, one of two things. Either they're genuinely concerned or they know something. Like, it's one or the other. Which this detail is kind of weird to me. Like, why would you do this? But they also told the family to hold off on putting any missing person posters out or contacting the media. Like, why? Why? I get it, but I don't.
And I know that in some cases, there are times whenever law enforcement wants to keep certain details to themselves, and it works sometimes. But with a missing persons case, I mean, if you don't release their photo, if you don't get the information out that she's missing and the details about her last known whereabouts, then you'll never find the one who's missing. I mean, how will anyone know if you don't actually put that information out there?
They have to know that she's gone. Yeah. Her family said that it was not like her. She wouldn't run away, and still the police told them this and didn't seem to really take it too seriously. At this time, both the police and the media ended up portraying her as a cocktail waitress at the bar who hung out with seedy people in the bar scene because of her job. So local law enforcement wouldn't really do anything pertaining to the case, so Heidi's father, Joe, ended up spending night and day searching for his baby girl. He was driving around, to different nightclubs. He filled up tons of notebooks worth of information that he just wrote down while he was searching for his daughter. He also tape recorded his thoughts and views as he navigated his search. He passed away in 1992, and those who knew him say he died of a broken heart, never knowing what happened to his daughter, and that he spent the rest of his life searching for her and the truth about what happened to her.
I mean, I can't blame him. If one of my family members went missing, I mean, I would be the same way. I just know myself, and I really feel for any of the parents or family members or loved ones of any victim because for me, it would be all that I could think about. I would not be able to deal with it not being solved. I would not be able to deal with not knowing who did something, who was responsible for taking away that person.
Yeah, like, it would be one of those things that you would obsess over, like, I understand, like, you have to move forward, but I don't think you ever quite get over it. You're not the same ever again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it would definitely become an obsession.
And I could see, like, our dad even, like, he's obsessive by nature anyways, so I could totally see how this would be, like, even more of an obsession, even for someone who's not like that by nature. When you have kids, it's just, like, it's a whole different side of you that it hits. Mm. So, after his death, his recordings and the notebooks were turned over to the FBI by his niece, Nina. So when the dog discovered Heidi's remains in 1984, the body was already in the advanced state of decomposition. So she had to be identified by her dental records, which is very common in these cases and in this situation. But her bones had been spread out by animals as well. So police were hoping to identify some kind of unique signature of the killer. But at this point, they really couldn't, and much of the area, including her remains, had been too affected by the elements to give the police any more to go on. Yeah. So this is she looked at me like I'm crazy. The suspected cause of death was trauma indicated by her fractured ribs. So I'm assuming maybe punctured a lung, any of that kind of stuff. So police soon learned that where she was found in Calder Road Fields were about 5 miles south of her place of work. They initially suspected the killer was someone who knew her, possibly a friend or a patron who worked with her at the Texas Moon Bar. Their search led to a dead end, just like her father's search did, and to this day, no one has been charged for her murder. The medical examiner and the local police have been accused of not preserving Heidi's clothes, fingernails, and other items that might have contained crucial forensic evidence, including DNA. Hey, 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 goodbye. We own no rights to any music we sing or quote. Anyways, including DNA, and this, as we'll see, will continue to be an ongoing issue for many of these cases. You know, this is your job, but it was also the 70s leading into the 90s. Yeah. So as far as we can find, the reason from the department for this, happening, for the mishandling some of the evidence, is because they moved offices and evidence crates, and because of this, they lost some of the evidence. And same for the medical examiner's office. There seemed to be some weird stuff happening there in many of the cases as well. Like a few of the examples that we're talking about, like things that they lost, fingernails or fingernail clippings from autopsies, which we know can be used or are a huge piece of evidence. And to lose that, you can't gain that back. It's just highly likely that there was definitely DNA under the nail clippings, clothing, any of that kind of stuff could have led us to something else. So those things are like super big ticket items in these cases that are just gone. So we're going to move to September 10th of 1984. A 16-year-old girl, Laura Lynn Miller, who is the daughter of Tim Miller, the director of the movie Texas Killing Fields, goes missing. So Laura, just a little bit about her. She loved music, was very popular among her peers. She and her family had recently moved into a new home in League City in order to get her into a new school. And this house was only a few blocks away from Heidi's. The landline phone had not been hooked up yet since they had just moved in 2 days prior, so her mom actually took her into town to use a payphone to call her boyfriend Vernon to see if he wanted to come over to the house. So the coincidence here is this was the same convenience store where Heidi was last seen. So same payphone area, same convenience store that Heidi had been seen to. Yeah, for real. Laura's mom was running late to work, and Laura wanted to keep talking, so she told her mom, it's no big deal, I'll walk home, which is only about a half a mile from the store. However, later that day, Laura's father Tim got home and Vernon knocked on the door. Tim thought it was odd that Vernon showed up to the house without Laura. So Tim asked, hey, why is Laura not with you? And Vernon, I'm not sure. I don't know. I thought she was here. So it turns out that Laura never made it home. Laura also had epilepsy and she was supposed to take medicine twice a day. So early on, it was thought that maybe Laura was on her walk home and had an episode, didn't have her meds. So her family started calling local hospitals, hoping that someone had found her and taken her there. But she wasn't found at any of the local hospitals. When this was taken to police again, they said she was probably a runaway, even though there was nothing that pointed to Laura running away. You would think that at this time, knowing the exact last known location of the missing woman 5 months earlier, that the police would have done a little bit more and had a little bit more of pep in their step, but nope, that wasn't the case. So, as more time went on, Tim, Laura's father, began to demand that they search the same area where Heidi's remains were found, and the police declined.
Why would you not search that area?
So at this point, Tim also discovered that they still hadn't filed an official missing persons report on Laura. Yeah, he was later quoted saying, "They did their best to convince me that I've lost my mind." Police even told him not to talk to Heidi's family because her murder was, in their own words, an isolated incident. So law enforcement ended up taking a sample of her clothes, hair, dental x-rays long after the fact. In the meantime, another victim was found in the Calder Road fields. So this victim was found by a group of boys riding their bikes in the same area on February 2nd, 1986, so 2 years later. So the police couldn't identify this body, and she did not match any missing persons case in the area. Since they were not able to identify her, she became a Jane Doe. They determined that she had been shot by a .22 caliber bullet, which had actually severed her spine. At this time, the fields were very thick and overgrown with minimal visibility, and it was overall hard to walk through this field. Crucial evidence could have been scattered over the 25 acres, but of course you'd have no way of getting that, and it wasn't like they were great at preserving or collecting evidence at this point. So now police suspected that the victims were possibly connected since the dumping locations were so close together. And while police searched the area for evidence on the Jane Doe case, they discovered a third body the same day, about 25 yards from the other victims under a tree. These remains ended up being Laura Miller.
So imagine the heartache that they could have saved Tim Miller had they actually went and looked in this area whenever he requested that they go and look there. How long was it from the time that she went missing to the time that she was found where he asked that they searched?
17 months after Laura went missing. So only 28 of her bones were actually recovered, and because she was severely decomposed, she also had to be identified with her dental records.
There was also a blue plaid Western-styled shirt, which was found in the field near the bodies, and there were several stains on this shirt. Many people had a hunch that this shirt could have belonged to the killer, but DNA testing was not available yet. But later on, whenever DNA testing was available, guess what? Yep, you guessed it. This ended up being a piece of evidence that got lost, and it was a big, big piece of evidence that got lost. Tim Miller, which is Laura Miller's dad, he believes that had the police searched whenever he requested it, that her remains would have been found earlier and that there would have been potential evidence found that led the killer before the elements destroyed it. He also believed that they may have been able to nail down a cause of death, which, as we know, would have also been huge, and it could have been a way to figure out if these crimes were connected. The county ended up keeping Laura's remains for 3 years and 9 months without ever determining her cause of death, even though, according to Tim, they told him that they would only be keeping them for 60 days. So Tim ended up threatening them with a lawsuit in order to get her remains back. So, needless to say, that at this point, he wasn't feeling very good about local law enforcement. He also questioned if the remains that he received even belonged to Laura. This is how little trust he had in the department. So, whenever he did get the remains back, he actually had the skull sent off for dental testing, and it did come back that the skull belonged to Laura, but he also sent off other bones for testing, and believe it or not, the medical examiner's office had mixed some of Jane Doe's remains in with Laura's. I think it was like a few ribs or something like that that ended up belonging to Jane Doe. But at this time, Tim's relationship with his wife was extremely rocky, and they ended up divorcing about 6 months after Laura's body was found. On top of Laura's death, they had already been through the loss of a child due to SIDS, and Tim's brother had also committed suicide just before Laura disappeared. Tim struggled with alcoholism for many years, but he did eventually get sober, and good for him because that's no small task. Tim later founded and directed Texas EquiSearch starting in 2000. It began as a search and recovery team on horseback to help families of missing persons, but it has evolved since then, and they do a lot of different types of searches now, including some that use drones. So this nonprofit search and rescue have performed searches in 48 states and 11 different countries. They've worked on over 2,600 cases, and they found 441 people alive and 355 victims' remains. As we know, before Tim founded EquiSearch, he helped search for his own daughter as well as many of the other Texas killing victims. He truly did dedicate his life to helping search for missing victims and to get justice for them. As for the Calder Road Fields investigation, Officer Robert Valentine, who worked the investigation, later admitted that the scene where they found the bodies were, quote, secured, but not as secure as I hope it would have been. There was no crime scene tape and only one single officer sitting in a lawn chair to secure the scene. He also admitted that there was a lot of, quote, old boy stuff going on, which I'm assuming he means good old boy. And I mean, saying that there's a lot of good old boy stuff going on, if you're from a small town, you probably know this can mean so many different things. So take that for what you will. Just a fun fact for you too, these murders started out as the Calder Road killings, but people began referring to them more and more as the Texas Killing Fields after the movie The Texas Killing Fields was released in 1984. It was actually a movie about the Cambodian genocide, but whenever the new nickname caught on is whenever the murders began to get national attention. Self-care isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. At Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness, they believe in helping you look and feel your absolute best. Whether you're looking for a rejuvenating medical-grade facial, Botox, fillers, or help on your weight loss journey, their expert team is there to enhance your natural beauty with personalized care. Ready to glow from the inside out? Book your appointment today at Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness and experience the confidence you deserve. Located inside Tejas Urgent Care in Mejia, Texas. Call or text now to book your appointment at 254-310-7131. Again, that's 254-310-7131.
Guess who's back?
All right, ready?
Why,
Okay.
yes, I am.
By 1986, the local police were pretty overwhelmed, and within a few years, League City went from a relatively small, safe town to having several unsolved abductions and murders. As more and more dots began to get connected between the murders, many realized that these abductions and murders may be connected to cases from 1971, when it all began. Between 1971 and 1977, the remains of 11 girls were discovered.
Wow.
Many were found along I-45, and they were scattered throughout several different jurisdictions, which that would make it hard.
I was about to say, that sounds super messy already.
Yep. This is where we want to get into the disconnect and the lack of communication and shared information that took place between the 11 different jurisdictions working on the investigation and all the cases.
Let's get into it.
They didn't have the same advancements in technology that we had today, which means they didn't have the ability to share information as easily. It was all done manually, and because of that, it took much longer to just get together and update one another on what was going on in each county or jurisdiction. Look at Toothless over there. He's so cute.
Taylor's in love with her lizard.
He's pretty cool. Okay, anyways, we digress. Also, keep in mind that the murders that took place in the 70s were along a different stretch of I-45 compared to the murders that took place in the 80s. So, the big question was,
Tell me, what was the big question?
are some or all of these murders connected? Had there been a serial killer operating along I-45 for years? Or was there more than one serial killer?
That's a great question. Let's find out.
Wish I could see her face. This brings us to the suspects. As we know, the disappearances continued for years with no suspects charged in any of the crimes, but on July 28th in 1984, a 29-year-old woman named Ellen Ray Simpson Beeson disappeared. Ellen lived with her parents and brothers in Friendswood, Texas. She had a stable job at the Texas Moon Club in League City, which is also, if you recall, where another victim, Heidi, worked.
Ah, that's right.
So Ellen enjoyed dancing on the weekends and was last seen at the Texas Moon Club, where she went with a friend, Candy Gifford. Now, there were different stories about if Ellen and Clyde already knew each other or not, but after some digging, we did uncover that Ellen may had met Clyde a couple of times, but she didn't really know him. It's now known that Candy Gifford, even though she was married, was actually the one dating Clyde.
Ah, okay.
And while at the Texas Moon Club that night, Candy and her husband got into a fight because Clyde was hanging around them.
Well, obviously.
Lord. Okay, so they ended up leaving, which left Ellen and Clyde there together, and ultimately, he was the last one to see her that night. So Clyde Edwin Hedrick was a local construction worker. He had moved to Houston from Florida for the booming construction projects and quickly found work as a roofer. At the time, he was a decent-looking guy who always wore a black cowboy hat. So he was given like a real Jason Aldean vibe.
I mean, I will say that he was way better looking back in the day than he is now.
Okay, so wait, funny story. Back in our Abilene days,
Oh, the Abilene days.
when we used to go to Guitar and Cadillac.
Guitars, Cadillacs, hillbilly music.
Did you ever go with us?
Probably.
Oh, it was a good time. It was like the only time there. Anyways, there was this one guy that was always there, and our group of friends, including my husband, always used to call him Jason Aldean. He did not look anything like Jason Aldean, but you could tell his inspiration for his outfits came from Jason Aldean. You didn't even see my handgun.
Oh, no, I did, but I don't like guns. I look the other way.
Oh, okay. Once again, I digress. Anyways, he loved going to the bars for dancing, and it seemed to be how he picked up women.
Okay, so he was smooth.
Oh, yeah. He obviously can dance because he would often win line dancing contests, and his nickname was Clyde the Slide.
Oh.
So,
Now all I can see in my head is the cha-cha slide.
at Guitars and Cadillac, Abilene, Texas, you
Yeah.
should go there if you can.
Go
Actually-
support your local honky tonk.
He saw himself as a ladies' man, even though many others saw him as a,
F-boy.
yeah, you can use that.
A fuck boy.
Well, you can't say that.
Fuck boy.
Oh my God, I'm about to turn your mic off. Later that evening, Ellen and Clyde kind of hit it off, and she told friends that they made plans to go swimming. The next day, Ellen's car was found in the parking lot of the bar, and her parents started calling around to see if they could locate her.
And that's something else with a lot of these victims because so many of them were categorized as runaways, but so many of them had parents or family members or friends, someone who cared about them, who were trying to
Like actively
locate them.
locating.
Yeah.
They called Candy, and Candy ended up reaching out to Clyde asking where Ellen went. He gave her a couple of different statements, and at this point, Ellen became a missing person. So the original story was that he and Ellen left the bar and drove by Candy's house, but there weren't any lights on, so they went back to the bar. And when she got out of his car, she started walking towards the car and got into a vehicle with someone else. So basically, he last saw her alive, but getting into an unknown vehicle. It seemed like the police believed his story, but Candy never did.
Hmm.
So she continued to ask Clyde what happened with Candy, and eventually his story changed over time.
So she stayed persistent, not with police, but with
Yep,
him.
yep, questioning him.
Mhm.
So about 4 months into Candy pressuring him about Ellen and her whereabouts, he said, "Do you want to know where she is?"
Yeah.
So Candy obviously said yes, and Clyde said, "Get in the car."
Ooh.
So he ended up driving her to an area near the Galveston Causeway, which was kind of like a dumping ground.
Well, that's creepy as hell.
And he took her to the spot that had a dumped bench seat from a car and lifted it up, showing her where Ellen's body was.
Oh, man, that's scary. So not only are you with someone who you
hmm
already have a doubt in your head about, but you're with him in this remote location where he is now showing you a dead body.
Here's the kicker. Ready? So she knew it was Ellen because she still had a necklace on. But according to Candy, she didn't go to the police right away with this information because she was still dating him and was worried what he would do if she told anyone.
What? Why?
Which
Why are you still dating this guy?
that's my first question.
Easier said, like, to leave someone than to actually do it. I completely understand that, but you now, like, confirmed that he told one of your best friends.
hmm So eventually, in July 1985, 1 year after Ellen went missing, Candy came forward with this information and made an official statement to police. There were threats made by Clyde to Candy about saying anything to anyone. So he basically would say things like, "If you tell anyone, you could be here."
Yeah, that typical intimidation.
Yeah, making threats against her family and friends as well. It wasn't until 5 or 6 months later when she and Clyde had an argument and he busted into her home that she went to make a statement.
So she either got scared enough of him to finally go and make a statement, or she had enough of just his behavior in general,
So she and the police went out looking for the remains of Ellen, but Candy had a little trouble remembering exactly where she was.
which is understandable.
It had been a while since he had shown her the spot. It was also nighttime. So when they went back a couple days later during the date, she was able to show them where Ellen's remains were. So at this point, Clyde admits that he and Ellen left the bar together. So he did admit to being the last one to see her. He said that they went to the Dickinson sand pit where she wanted to skinny dip, but he didn't want to because he didn't know her that well.
Okay.
So he proceeded to say that Ellen went skinny dipping and was trying to coax him into the water. He was sitting on the tailgate of the truck drinking a beer, and he realized he didn't hear any noise. So he turned on his headlight and saw Ellen floating in the water.
Hmm.
He said he walked into the water and got her, but she wasn't breathing and was dead.
Okay.
So he didn't want to be blamed for her death and was afraid that no one would believe that he didn't kill her. So he put her in the truck, went back to his sister's house, and switched cars. Then went back to the bar with her still in the car and hung out there until closing time. So basically, he was trying to give
Yeah, he was
himself
trying
some
to.
sort of alibi.
Okay, so one, I do understand his fear of not being believed by police because he had a previous record. I do understand that, but this is what makes it a little more difficult to
Mhm.
understand is that he literally drove around with her
Yeah.
dead body in his car.
And the fact of the matter is, the other missing victim, he knew well too.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of problems.
I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in the situation, I guess.
Well, of
Not,
course.
no, I know there's certain things you can't help, but you can help some of it.
Hmm.
So he was brought in for questioning in 1985, and this situation for law enforcement and prosecutors at the time was obviously a suspicious circumstance. Finding the body this way, Candy being the person who brought this to them, and saying that Clyde put her there.
Hmm.
And once the body was recovered, it was taken, as all bodies are, to the medical examiner's office for autopsy. What the autopsy concluded at the time was that there was no sure way to give a cause of death. How convenient. So, the manner and means of death couldn't be determined. So, this really put prosecutors at a disadvantage, and the only charge they could bring up at the time was a misdemeanor charge for abuse of a corpse, being that he drove around with the dead body in his vehicle.
So that's all that they could get him on for that.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's the only thing he admitted to, and it's the only thing that they could prove without reasonable doubt.
Okay.
So in 1986, he was charged with abuse of a corpse and served 1 year.
1 year.
At this point, they closed the case but kept him on the radar. On September 8th of 1991, a fourth victim was discovered in Calder Fields. A couple riding horseback smelled something terrible on the trail and followed the scent to a decomposing body. So it was about 100 yards south of all the other victims. So police were unable to identify this body, naming her Janet Doe. The medical examiners determined that she died about 6 weeks prior, but couldn't determine a cause of death, much like Jane Doe. Janet Doe did not match any of the cases of missing persons in the area.
That's tough.
So they tried to be creative and reconstruct the skull of both does to give an idea of what they could have looked like and try and get some leads towards identifying them, but no one was able to identify them. So at this point, the Calder Roads Fields case was being investigated as a serial killer case, which gave the FBI the freedom to investigate. So they put together a profile for the serial killer, and based on that profile, it was said that the killer lived close to the fields, he kept clippings of the case, had a superior attitude, and had difficulty in his relationships with women. This brings us to suspect number 2.
So basically, they had the FBI do a profile of what they think this killer might be,
Mhm.
and that is what they are going off of from here on out.
Correct. So, suspect number 2 is a man named Robert William Abel, who owned 2 properties connected to the killing fields and was immediately put onto their radar. So, he owned the land that had the riding stables to the west.
Okay.
He was a former NASA scientist who helped develop the modern Saturn rocket that got astronauts to the moon.
Okay. So he's super
Yes,
intelligent.
super intelligent and oftentimes had difficulty in romantic relationships. And he was known to abuse animals.
Oh, that's so sad. That sucks.
So he had been divorced 3 times, and one of his ex wives said that he threatened to kill her if she didn't give him sex like he wanted it. Multiple ex wives claimed that he used to beat his horses, and if one of the horses died, he would leave their body in the field to rot, which was very similar to how the victims were left in the field to decompose.
Okay, but I feel like a horse, that's a pretty difficult thing to have to move out of a field.
Yeah.
Is that common? I mean, obviously, we are from Texas, but I don't know. If a horse or a livestock animal dies, do they go and they move that body or do they leave that there?
Well, I know dad and even my husband's family has had a cow go missing and it ended up passing away or whatever. That would just decompose where it was.
So you're saying that, yeah, it could be common practice for
Yeah.
someone to leave a dead livestock animal in a field.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I feel like sometimes that's just too large of an animal to move.
That's where I was coming
Because
from.
you got to
So,
think
okay.
like 1,500 pounds
Oh,
for a
yeah, it's
cow
massive. Yeah.
or bigger,
That's what I'm
like
saying. It would have
for
been very
if it's full
difficult.
grown.
Yeah. Okay. So this could be common practice. Okay.
Yeah. So he was immediately cooperative with the police and the FBI. He provided search equipment and cleared nearby brush to make the search easier and even spoke to the media, but they felt like he was just a little too involved in the investigation. So,
Which can be a thing. Sometimes with serial killers, basically, they like to be involved in their work somehow or another.
yeah, and that was part of their profile, remember? Like he
Yeah.
would keep close connection.
Right.
So at this point, the heat on Clyde Hedrick had faded and the FBI began to focus more and more on Robert. Tim Miller added to the suspicion of Robert Abel because he had been investigating these cases for years, and he was a strong believer that Robert was the killer. The police department, with support from the FBI, then released an affidavit which was made available to the public. claiming that Robert Abel was potentially a sexual serial killer who committed the Calder Road Fields murders.
So remember, guys, that like Taylor said, this was made available to the public. So they announced basically in his town where he lives that he was a serial killer.
But they did not charge him.
Isn't that crazy?
Announced it publicly, but did not charge him. They just put it out there for the public to see and stated that based on their profile, he lines up, and then labeled him as the killer, essentially. So this caused other local police departments to panic, thinking that some of the other Texas killing field victims might be connected to Robert as well. Robert openly denied having anything to do with any of the abductions and murders, but police and FBI have warrants and they start searching his property for anything they think could link him to the crimes.
So, I mean, that is interesting, but it does seem like he matches the profile.
So during the search of his property, they did find some strange things. Among the items they found were old newspaper articles about the Calder Road killings,
Mm-hmm.
a human tooth with a gold crown, several 22 caliber firearms, a woman's glove, 6 pairs of eyeglasses, a mysterious key, and reportedly he also had 4 different photos of where the 4 bodies were found after the fact.
Okay.
As we know, Jane Doe was shot with a 22 caliber gun.
That's a pretty common weapon, I feel like.
I feel like it's very common, especially if you're a rancher,
I just feel
especially
like in general, if anybody has a gun, it's gonna be one of those first guns that you buy.
yeah, like a lower class.
Yeah, starter gun, if you
Yeah.
will.
Aside from that, while some of the items are weird, none of them really connected him to any of the other crimes. So the investigators did consider the 22 caliber gun found at Robert Abel's was the one used on Jane Doe, but when the autopsy was performed on her body, the Galveston County medical examiner had ruined the bullet while stripping the bones in a boiling acid solution, which is the technique used in autopsies to remove soft tissue from a skeleton without damaging bones to search for wounds.
That's super unfortunate.
Yep. So in this case, it stripped the potential evidence from the bullet so they could no longer use the bullet to match it to the gun.
Oh, man. Shot to the heart, and you're to blame.
Disclaimer, we own no rights to any song that we jack up while doing our recreation.
Absolutely none.
This was a huge piece of evidence that could have nailed the killer or ruled out other suspects.
Yeah, absolutely it was.
So, after all the searches, the police and FBI failed to find anything that actually tied Robert Abel to any of the crimes.
Another unfortunate thing that happens, a presumably innocent man is now known as a killer.
So, Abel vocalized to the public that any items collected from him by police and FBI were collected in the attempt to help with their search. Technically, he was cleared as a suspect, but we'll see that in the court of public opinion after the police and FBI put information out that pretty much said he was the killer. It didn't matter that he got cleared, and it really did ruin his life.
Again, this is common. Anyone who gets named as a potential suspect. We just covered the Girl Scout murders. It was the same thing for Jack Schroff, the farmer. They printed that he was a slayer in the newspaper before they had any evidence. So it's too common that we see this.
Yeah. It was later pointed out that his behavior and the way he seemed to gather data, like the way he took the photos and took notes in his notebook about the cases, really did line up with his background as a scientist and how a scientist may actually act.
Which does make sense because that's what scientists do. They collect and gather data, evidence. So, yeah, that makes sense.
So to have an affidavit out there before they even had anything to link him was incredibly damaging to his reputation. After this, several years go by without any advancements on the case, and several more girls go missing off of I 45. And I think this is actually a good stopping point for part 1. So I'm Taylor.
And I'm Riane Nix.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode.
We hope you join us on the next episode for more
Pure Malice.
We'll be back
Back
again. We'll be back. We'll be back. We'll be back. The information shared in this podcast or on this website is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The host will not be held responsible for any misled interpretations of this content. The opinions and views expressed are those of the host and guest and should not be considered advice. We cannot guarantee the accuracy of any statements from guests or the sufficiency of the information. Are you ready to lose weight and keep it off? At Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness, we offer powerful, medically supervised weight loss solutions using semaglutide and tirzepatide, the same game-changing medications making headlines across the country. Our expert team will guide you every step of the way so you can achieve real results safely and confidently. Feel better, look better, live better. Call Vital Flow Aesthetics and Wellness today at 254-310-7131 and start your transformation. Vital Flow, where wellness meets results.